Okay. Okay, good morning everybody. My name's Malcolm Kinney. I'm the admissions tutor for social work. I'm also one of the lecturers on the social work course. Welcome to Liverpool John Moores University today. And you've come to listen and to talk about social work and what we do in the John Moores around social work education. And with me is also...
Hi, I'm Damien Robson. I'm a third year on the BA programme, one of the course reps as well.
Okay. The way we do this talk is, first of all, maybe just tell you a little bit about what social workers do, which almost certainly you'll know anyway, but it's good to just to refresh our memories around what the task of social work is in a modern society, in today's Britain. And then we'll talk a little bit about what you need to have about you to become a social worker. What does it require in terms of your qualities, your experience, your education, to actually be a social worker. We'll talk a little bit about the programme as well, although the programme is under review, and so will be very different, for example, from Damien's programme. And as we're speaking, there's a curriculum planning meeting which is going to be going on all morning. So thank you for getting me out of that one. So it will be quite different, but I'll be able to talk about generally what we're going to cover. And certainly the themes will be very similar. Is everybody here for the BA? Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay. So what do we do? What do social workers do? Why do you want to be a social worker and not a nurse, for example? Why do you want to be a social worker and not a paramedic? For you, you need to be fairly clear for your reasons coming into this profession. Why social work? And social work with a whole variety of different types of people who have one commonality, and that is they're struggling. People are struggling often quite significantly, and it needs to be significantly to attract our service in some aspect of their life. So a few images up there are of people, actually they don't look like they're struggling very much, do they? Although some of them do. But it's people working with people who have needs which need support services. Services which maybe can't be fulfilled by, say, family or friends or other means. So therefore, social services, social work needs to come in and do assessments around what a person requires to sustain as independent, as a fulfilling life as possible. That's what social work is. It's about filling those gaps, if you like, in society, and people start to struggle with their lives, and it's to try and help them maintain productive lives. So on there, for example, there might be, say, an image of somebody with a learning disability, say having a cup of tea, talking to either a support worker or a social worker, and that person may be in supported housing, maybe in supported employment, may have a package of care around them to help them have a decent type of life. And as you can see, the social worker is smiling nicely and the person is smiling nicely, and often social work is a very pleasant occupation where we develop very positive relationships with individuals in need and help them on their journeys through life. And that's maybe one of the more positive aspects of social work. Another one of the images is an elderly man who looks like he's in his own home. And one of the key objectives for social work is to try and help people maintain as much independence for as long as they feel they need it. And actually most elderly people want to maintain independence. They don't want to go into nursing homes, they don't want to go into residential homes. Some people do, but generally people want to maintain independence. But as we know, as our bodies become frail, as our minds become frail, it becomes more and more difficult to do the basics in life. And that can be something as simple as making a cup of tea, going to the toilet, etc., etc., etc. And again, social work is about maybe going in and saying, actually, what we need is maybe this woman, maybe a support worker, to come in 3 or 4 times a day to help the person with their meals, with their clothing, with their cleaning, whatever is required to help that person maintain as an independent life as possible. So we do those sorts of things. And again, that can be very enjoyable, very worthwhile. We can have very positive relationships with the people we work with. The picture maybe of the young woman. Oh yeah, come in. Oh yeah, it's okay. The picture of the young woman bent over a toilet. What do you think might be happening there? Has anybody got any ideas what might be happening? We don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening really. I can maybe, sorry. So she might have problems, mightn't she, with her mental health, which means for whatever reason she's got a feeling that she might be fat and she's not fat. And you'd look at her and you can see she's very, very thin. But when she looks in the mirror, she won't see somebody who's very, very thin. She'll possibly see somebody who's large and obese and ugly, and she'll have very low self-esteem and very low self-image. And social work can be about working with those sorts of people who are really struggling, because it can become dangerous. People can become a danger to themselves when they lose lots and lots of weight and lots of issues. And then we work in a multi-professional way. We work with psychiatrists and we work with nurses and we work with lots of other people to try and make sure that people like that young woman can survive through what is obviously a very difficult period. Why she has problems, I mean, why would she have problems? Why do people have eating disorders? What's going on? She may have been abused. What else? Any other reasons she might be having those sorts of problems? Domestic violence. So there's almost certainly, and these are really good answers, because in terms of social work, what we're looking for is the reasons things happen to people which create situations they react to. So she's almost certainly reacting to situations which have happened to her in her life, and that's her way of coping maybe. Her way of coping is either, there's different types of eating disorders, but she might, for example, have been putting her fingers down her throat and making herself throw up after every meal. And why she's doing that is incredibly important. And maybe that's what makes social worker maybe a little bit different than some of the other professionals, is that we're very concerned with the why from a very holistic perspective. Why is this happening? It's not because she has a diagnosis of something. It's because of multiple complex issues probably going on in her life which need to be addressed. The middle picture, that's a nice picture, isn't it, of maybe a social worker talking to several children. And children and families work is a big part of social work. And it doesn't matter whether you work in learning disabilities, whether you work in mental health, whether you work in adult, whether you work in youth justice or drug and alcohol, it doesn't matter. Children are everywhere. And social work is a very diverse profession, but children are everywhere. And so child protection is a big issue for social workers. So on the course, you'll get lots of stuff around child protection and how we protect vulnerable children. Maybe children like the one who's being sick in the toilet, for example, what's going on. And that can be a bit of a stressful bit of social work. In fact, it can be a very stressful bit of social work. Going into houses where abuse is happening, addressing very complex problems, confronting perpetrators of violence against children, psychological violence, sexual violence, physical violence, is a very difficult thing to do. And it is the bit of social work which people are probably most anxious about. But with proper training, proper support, proper reflection, we can work in these places and in these environments and hopefully make some kind of difference. Quite a challenging bit of social work, but also quite rewarding as well. There's also a picture there of somebody who's obviously just injected, so drug use issues or drug misuse issues. Again, how people cope with life often. People often cope with life, and life can be tough. And I guess one of the things the next slide is going to do is saying what you need to be a social worker. And I guess one of the things you do need is a feeling that actually the world's maybe not quite what it could be or should be. Maybe have that sense of justice and injustice. So people take drugs for all sorts of reasons, illicit and legal drugs for all sorts of reasons. In social work, we will look at the differences, maybe in attitudes to drug misuse. For example, if you're rich, it might be a very, very different attitude than if you're not rich, if you're poor, and the judgments we make and how we make those. So drug misuse, big issues, which will also social workers are involved in. And the last image, and these are just a very random selection of images. It's certainly not saying that these are just the people we work with. We work with all sorts of people. Just some examples are things like looking at race and racism and looking at the way we treat people like refugees coming into our country and some of the key issues around the traumas and supporting people on those very complicated journeys that they're on and maybe helping them settle into this country in more productive ways. Okay, any questions about that bit? Any reflections? So that's the sort of things social workers do, which I guess you've already started to read and think about, hopefully. In terms of what you need to be a social worker, one of the things from a lot of the inquiries, and you'll know these people, Victoria Columbier and Baby Peter, those sorts of inquiries which have shown us that actually sometimes to be a social worker in tough areas of the country, to knock on the door and not get in, for example, repeatedly, and not having maybe the support you need to have to take direct affirmative action can be an incredible challenge. So one of the things you need to be a social worker is you need to be quite a resilient person. You need to be able to go home after a very stressful day and get some sleep for one. And that can be a challenge. For example, if you were the social worker of Baby Peter and it was the 5th time you've been round to the house and you were really quite very suspicious that stuff was going on with that young boy, but you weren't quite to the point where you had enough proof, but you had very strong suspicion, then you go home and you've got to sleep then, knowing that Baby Peter or whoever you're working with, and Baby Peter is very much just one case of multiple cases which social workers are working right now in this city and in the places you've come from. And it's just an example. And you go home, you've got to then get on with your own life, looking after your own kids and your own relationships, etc., etc. That can be tough. So in terms of resilience, you've got to have that bit of your personality. That is resilience. And also the ability to work on that. Because it's not about individuals in social work, it's about teams. It's about how you are supported. And one of the things we have learned from those inquiries is that we need to much better support people who are doing these jobs through good, strong teams, through good supervision, and good multi-professional work. And all of those things hopefully have improved significantly since those inquiries. So that resilience, you need to be the type of person who perseveres. Because like Baby Peter, like Victoria Columbier, you've got to stick at it. So it's going there day after day after day after day. It's about being a bit like the old proverbial dog with the bone. I'm not letting go. I know something's wrong and I'm going to find out. So one of the other things is investigative skills, for example, that being a bit of a private detective almost, or doing detective work, finding out what's going on and why it's going on. So it's strong themes in social work. And having that inquisitive, caring part to your personality that can be assertive when you need to be assertive. Most of the time it's not like that, I must assure you. Most of the time people we work with want us to work with them, recognise they have problems, recognise they have needs, and actually welcome us into their homes and sit down with us and we have a nice cup of tea together, and we talk about, and they talk about their issues and how they want to address their issues, and you're there to help them with those journeys. So don't be too scared by the high profile inquiries. That's just a little bit of social work, the scariest bit of social work. And there were 3 documentaries on last year about, was it last year, Damon? There were 3 documentaries it was last year about, and it was called Damned If You Do, Damned If You Don't, all about social work. And you might still be able to get hold of those. And they're really worth a watch because it follows social workers doing their job and you follow a social worker around into the estates and into their offices and talk to other professionals, and it gives you a reasonable feel for what it might be like in that bit of social work. That's child protection social work, so it's not all aspects of social work, but it's quite interesting. Did you find that useful?
I did. I suppose the critique of it was that it's maybe further embedding that idea that social workers just work with children. And there's sometimes the interventions that they do can be quite restrictive and can be quite distressing for families, which it's not always the case. But no, it was good. I suppose it was quite gritty, wasn't it? And it was, it showed the multiple issues that go on within families, whether that's parents with learning disabilities or parents with substance and alcohol problems or domestic violence. It was all in there. It's all linked.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, do watch it. But bear in mind what Damien's saying around it is just about one bit of social work. A lot of social work is being very open and non-judgmental and open to different perspectives. We work with people who take drugs. We work with people who have abortions. We work with people who sexually abuse children. We work with lots of different types of people. So therefore, that non-judgmental approach, being able to work with lots of different types of people, is really important. And that can be very challenging for some people, because we all have our own sort of ideologies we live our lives by, and so therefore working with somebody, for example, who is taking drugs might be a challenge. So we need to think about that and reflect about it. We work with all people in all aspects, in all parts of our society. I've already talked about a strong sense of social justice. And part of that is being able to advocate for people when they have been wronged or when they are really struggling with their lives. And that's a key theme for social work, having that sense of social justice. Hopefully you've got that. Being able to remain calm in a crisis. Have you been in a crisis? Have you experienced being in a crisis in your life? How did you respond to that? Are you able to remain calm in a crisis? We're not looking for people to come on the course with all of these skills and all of these qualities as if you're ready to go into social work. You've got 3 years, okay? But are they part of you? Are you comfortable or feel you could be comfortable going into a crisis and working with people who are maybe behaviourally very challenging and in your face and swearing at you? Do you think you could do that? As I say, you'll have 3 years to explore and to develop your skills in relation to those needs. Obviously, good communication skills. What social workers should be very good at is talking and listening. Listening especially. Listening to people appropriately and helping people to reflect on their issues. In social work, we talk about empowerment, for example. And empowerment is about listening to people from their perspective and helping them make sense of their situation and help them develop their own solutions. You already know that often the worst thing you can do to somebody is says what you need to do is, and then tell you what you need to do. And often that type of approach has minimal effect, because maybe the person's not to the point where they can make sense of that. Maybe sometimes they are, but most of the time people are on a journey of trying to make sense of their own situation in their own way. So good communication skills, good investigative skills, ability to connect theory to practice. You'll get a lot of social theory in social work. A lot of it's around social sciences, so around psychology, around sociology. Broad themes we talk about in social work are anti-oppressive practice, that people have problems often related to how much oppression they suffer in their life, and so therefore social workers try and use lots of different types of tools to work anti-oppressively to help people move forward in their own journeys. So it's quite complicated sometimes, but the basis of it is actually fairly simple, and it is about thinking about power, about how we use power in appropriate ways in working with people in need. But it does take 3 years. I think you'd agree with that. It does take 3 years to get longer. Actually, you never quite get there. I'm not there yet. We keep on reflecting. We keep on thinking. Yeah, it takes longer, but you get to base one hopefully at the end of 3 years. And the last bit is being a good critical, reflective thinker. That you can take criticism, that you can reflect on your own needs and what you need to do to have to develop. So what's my gap? So for example, maybe it could be you're not very confident presenting, for example. And if somebody says to you, and get then what we'll do is, if you're not very confident in presenting, guess what we'll do? We'll get you up here presenting, because that's how you get your confidence. Now that can be a little bit scary. So if you're a good critical reflective thinker, you'll be able to develop strategies to carry on improving, not only on this course, but right through your professional career. And again, one of the outcomes of many of the inquiries is that's what we need. We need people to be open to good critical reflective thinking, and therefore use supervision with maybe people who are experienced to help us with that journey. So they're just some of the things we need to be a social worker. Any questions or reflections on that? Again, these are probably things you have already looked at the websites, etc., and got a feel for. Employment. Jobs. We need jobs, don't we? You'll want a job at the end of this. And 3-4 years ago, I'd have been sitting here saying, fantastic, really excellent prospects for our graduates getting jobs. Nearly all of our graduates were in full-time employment after their first year. It's not so easy for me to say that now. It's a much tougher environment. We know the sort of economic climate we're working in now, and the austerity measures, they're hitting social work, they're hitting the voluntary sector, they're hitting the private sector, and it's a lot tougher. So I think the statistics for last year were approximately 70% of our graduates from last year are now in full-time employment or full-time education. I would imagine most of those are in full-time employment. That means 30% aren't after a year. So some of those might be doing other things, like maybe some agency work, etc., to keep the wolf from the door, but it is tougher. The more geographically mobile you are, the better your chances are of getting a job. So for example, if you can move down to London, the prospects down in London are much, much better than, say, here in Liverpool. But again, it varies. Child protection is still an area we need social workers in, even locally and in the Northwest. So there are jobs, but it's becoming tougher. What I will say is the best students get the jobs. So if you work hard, you attend, you're energetic, you're committed, you're enthusiastic, they're the students who always get the jobs, because they're the students who go out of here and they've made best use of the learning experience. Most opportunities, well not most, but lots of opportunities, statutory sector, and in terms of pay, that tends to be better paid. And I think social workers now start, you probably know better than me, Damien, it's about 25,000,
between 25 and 35
is the salary scale. So that's the sort of scale, and that's sort of equivalent to nursing. It's equivalent to teaching. It's that sort of professional standard. So we're on that sort of bit in terms of. However, if you go into the local voluntary sector or private organisations, there might not be that level of salary, and certainly the voluntary sector tends to pay less, and sometimes quite significantly less than the statutory sector. But the compensation of working in the voluntary sector is often you're doing social work, which is a lot more creative and engaged with individuals, communities and groups. So there are some compensations for losing some money. It depends how much importance you attach to having a really good salary. We do, and I've already mentioned, we typically work in teams, in statutory social work, about 6 staff in a team, but that can vary quite, that's a very loose approximation. There can be teams of 2, 3, 4, up to 12, 13, 14. It really depends what bit of social work you go into and what sort of teams they have in that bit of social work, but often it's around, say, 6 to 8 staff. And finally, we do a lot of work alongside other professionals. Multi-professional working is a big theme. If you work in child protection, if you work in mental health, you work in learning disabilities, you'll almost certainly need to talk to psychologists, psychiatrists, the police, etc., 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 teachers, nurses, midwives. These are all the professionals, the sorts of professionals that social workers have daily contact with in their role. So effective multi-professional working is a strong theme on the course and in social work practice. You're going to come onto a brand new programme. reviewing it as we speak, and that's because the political goalposts have changed. They're always changing, but they've changed again, and now we have a new professional body. We have the Health Care Professionals Council. We've moved away from the General Social Care Council, and we also have a College of Social Work. The College of Social Work website, and if you go onto the College of Social Work website, and it's really worth going onto the College of Social Work website, you'll get a feel for the current themes in terms of education, in terms of what's happening, in terms of professional development. You'll get an idea for what's happening in social work, and also the professional capabilities, what you need to have to be a social worker. Some of the things I've been talking about, which will be more explicitly explained in the College of Social Work literature. So do have a look at that. And it's really important in terms of your application that you properly investigate what social work is, read some of the magazines, look at the websites, maybe some introductory texts. So when you're doing your application, you can connect your experience, your personal experience, your educational experience to why you want to be a social worker. We get about, I think last year we got about nearly 500 applications for 25 places on our BA in social work course. And the students who got shortlisted, the students who got on the course were the ones who did the research, who explored what you needed to be a social worker, and we were able to connect those things. So it is still quite a challenge. It is still quite a lot of demand for social work, and that's not just Liverpool John Moores University. You'll find that very high competition wherever you go. In terms of the main change is the days on placement, and they're going to be reduced from, it used to be half the course was on placement, half the course was in university. Now it's 170 days on placement and the rest in university, and we've replaced skills days, so we'll have lots of skills days in university, and we'll be doing things like for example doing video work, group work, role play, all of those things. We do them now, but we'll be doing them even more when we go on to the new programme. And maybe Damien will maybe talking a little bit about maybe some experiences of being a student and the student learning. The BA course which you're coming on, students, you come from we've got 3 countries in the room at least that we know of from a variety of backgrounds. It still tends to be women, which says something about the gender roles in our society. We'll get into that discussion, but that's quite interesting. But maybe 95% would you say, Damien, in terms of women? Just 95% women want to be social workers, and that's similar for nursing as well. So those gender stereotypes are alive and kicking. Okay, the disciplines you cover, which I've maybe already talked about, are things like law, social work theory and practice, research methods, social policy, sociology, psychology, interprofessional learning, ethics and values. We're covering that sort of subject matter. And that is to help you to theoretically engage with what it is to be a social worker. We use a wide variety of teaching methods, so you'll get lots of this, where and you'll be falling asleep sometimes, and I apologise for that. But hopefully also lots of conversation, lots of interaction, lots of group work, lots of case studies, lots of maybe more exciting ways of learning, which it often depends on the lecturer what they like to do, but you will get a variety undoubtedly. We also have a peer mentoring support system. Are you part of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want to quick something about that?
The peer mentoring is basically the third years would get a group of mentees from the first year, and we have a bit of a meet and greet and exchange email addresses and things. And it's just like a point of contact really for people who are maybe new to the city or new to the programme. It's a way of kind of getting in touch with someone who's been in that position and has kind of been overwhelmed by the kind of the amount of assignments that you've got to write, or worries about exam, or worries about going on to placements, and it just maybe it's just a more informal way of kind of putting your mind at rest, I suppose, with someone who's kind of been there. So.
Thank you. Okay, so that's fairly new, and I think it's still early days, but it looks like for some students it could be very useful. Maybe especially students who've come from outer city, who've it's all brand new, and that can be very anxiety provoking. So maybe having somebody who's in the third year, who's a peer, a mentor, might be a little bit better than maybe coming to talk to your personal tutor, someone like me, who might not understand those problems quite as well as maybe Damien, who was there only 2 years ago and has come through it quite successfully. You will get tutorial support, however, and you'll get a tutor from almost day one, and they'll be with you almost certainly for your 3 years, and you'll get that support. We'll see you at the start of the semester. We'll go out and make sure that your placements are properly organised, that the contract's in place, and we'll come and see you halfway through your placement to make sure everything's going well. And also we'll do a reflective exercise at the end of the semester to do some planning for what you could improve on for your next semester. So those sorts of support you'll get. And also we're a big institution, so there's lots of institutional support as well in terms of supporting you in terms of if you have other needs. Maybe, for example, dyslexia, lots of dyslexia students coming in who might need some extra support. There's lots of mechanisms to access that support. There's lots of support around training you, for example, if you're struggling with your English or your academic writing generally. So you can go to extra classes to help you with those issues. So, and that's one of the advantages, I guess, is coming into a big university, is that we've got lots of those institutional levels of support as well. You almost certainly know this in terms of we want 280 UCAS points. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this other than because you can look on the website to make sure that you meet the requirements, other than say that what we ask for, which other universities don't often ask for, is 500 hours related work experience before you come on the course. And we do for that for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is just to make sure that you're sure you want to do social work, that actually you've been out there and you've done a bit of social work, you've worked with people who have specific needs and you've enjoyed it. And saying, actually, I've enjoyed doing that. This is something I want to do for the future, rather than maybe coming on not being quite sure, and 3 years is a long time to come to the end and say, actually, maybe I don't want to be a social worker after all. It also helps you in coming on the course in terms of your maturity, in terms of being able to engage with the course more effectively from day one. You've got some experiences to draw upon. So we ask you to demonstrate those 500 hours.
Can I just say about the on top about GCSE English and Math?
Yeah.
We're doing the access course, and we were told that we didn't need GCSE English, just GCSE Maths. So we're not doing GCSE.
No, you're needing maths and English at GCE grade C or equivalent. So check that. That could be. It could be. And you need to check that with your tutor, that it's been validated as equivalent. It needs to have been validated as equivalent into the course. So check that out as a matter of urgency. Okay? Because that's an absolute requirement, that you have that qualification. We've talked about life and experiences and work experiences, and life experiences are important also. You've all had life experiences which you can draw upon in terms of being a social worker. The grandma maybe who was very unwell and you helped her. Whatever experiences you can draw upon will add to your potential application strength. The application is via UCAS. You have to go through satisfactory CRB and health checks, obviously. We'll be very careful, and we are very careful about making sure that people are the right sort of people to come on social work. So you go through those sorts of checks as well. And there's a link there to, actually we need to put this on Blackboard. We will put this on a site so that you have access to this PowerPoint, so you can go onto these links. So that's sort of recruitment. Just admissions. First thing I'll say about the course is make sure you prepare well for your application. Get somebody to read it through with you, go back to it, leave it, make sure it's really good, okay? Don't make any silly mistakes on it. I do the shortlisting, okay? So I'm reading hundreds and hundreds of applications, and guess what? The ones who I'm thinking, oh no, are the ones where there's a grammatical mistake in the first two sentences, or somebody's made a silly comment. So not demonstrating the basic skills. So demonstrate your very basic skills at that point, that you've got good literacy and you can write effectively. So be careful with your application and get as much support as you need for that. In terms of if you get through the shortlisting, and we also ask for an extended personal statement. So do read the website very carefully. When you put your UCAS form in, we also ask you to put in an extended personal statement, and that helps us with the shortlisting. Sorry. No, that's on the website and it's a requirement. So you need to maybe get back onto that. Okay? So it's on the website. If you go onto what you need to do, it tells you need to complete an extended personal statement and submit it with your UCAS form. And it can be a reason for not being shortlisted. So get onto that one as well. Okay? Once you've got through the application process and, through the initial application process, we shortlist and then we get to the interviews. And the interviews now are becoming fairly standardised across the country, and that what we have to do is we have to look at you in terms of your ability to work in a group. So we'll get you in group work, and we'll watch you discuss maybe a social work case study. We'll ask you to do a written exercise. So there'll be about 25 minutes where you'll sit down and write something for us, and we'll give you a theme, a social work theme to write about, and then we'll also interview you. So it's a pretty intense process really to get on the course, but it's actually not as scary as it sounds. I mean, did you find it scary? Because you went through a similar process, didn't you? Similar.
We weren't assessed doing group work, but
Yeah.
I suppose
That's new.
the interview. I felt quite at ease at the interview. It could have well been because the person that was interviewing me kind of reminded me of my nan, because we had there's a focus group.
Yeah, you have a service user or a practitioner and an academic.
So there was a service user who was in the interview, and she was really calming. I suppose I was quite lucky in that sense. Well, she kind of reminded me of my nan, so it was I just kind of so the interview just kind of went quite easily for me.
I can't promise we'll have someone there who reminds you of your nan, by the way. Well, I'll do my best, but I might not be able to promise that one. But it's not as stressful as maybe I'm portraying it. We do try and put you at your ease when you come in. We're friendly people. We're social workers. So if we can't be friendly here, I'm getting you through this process. There's something quite badly wrong. So hopefully you'll find that we are a friendly group of people. But the bottom thing is refer to the fact file and read it very carefully. Make sure you're doing it properly and as per instructions. Okay? Don't need to do that. I'm not going to talk much about the course because it's being revalidated as we speak. I'll put this on with updated information as we develop the course. Other than to say what you're going to be doing is a lot of theoretical learning in university around oppression and anti-oppression, using social sciences as the tool and the means to do that, and lots of reflective exercises. And then you'll have, in your second year, you'll have a 70-day placement, and in your third year, you'll have a 100-day placement. Okay? That's the current programme, so that's why I'm not going to go through that in any detail. They can be. We tend to be around Liverpool, and one of the positives about coming to Liverpool John Moores University is we're right in the middle of Liverpool, and although Liverpool is looking better than it's ever looked in terms of the centre, it's still one of the poorest cities in the country. So there's lots of areas of high social deprivation, so lots of need for social work out there, and so that's where most of the placements are. But we do have placements out and about as well in the northwest. Even I've been on placement visits to London. We've had placements in Ireland, for example. You can get placements in Ireland. We've had so there are possibilities for placements outside of Liverpool. We do have employment support. So when you get to the end of your programme, we can look at career development workshops. There's something in John Moores which is called the World of Work certificate, which I think is still fairly unique to the Liverpool John Moores University. It's an extra qualification which you can do alongside your studies. And it's just something which validates your practical experiences. And increasingly employers in the Northwest are saying, actually, this is useful. So you can access that as well. That's you don't have to, but you can get that. Are you doing the WOW?
Yeah, I'm just partway through it.
Okay. There's careers advice. We can do like mock interviews with you, for example, to get you ready for that big jump from university to the workplace. We'll have career workshops. We'll have employers coming in to talk to you from agencies. So there's lots of things around employment and getting you ready for work, which we can access you to. I've already talked a little bit about career opportunities, so I won't repeat myself, other than it's a bit more challenging than it was. But in terms of comparison to other courses, we still match up pretty well. So social work is still pretty good overall in terms of people leaving the course and getting into work. And I think that's just about it. One thing I've not said is, because what you're doing today is making that choice, and you're going to go around lots of institutions and making a choice where you want to study for the next 3 years. In terms of social work here, what can we offer that's different? Well, I'm not too sure you'll pick that up. I think in terms of the staff team, 95% of us are qualified social workers. We're registered social workers. I'm a social worker. I'm a teacher, I'm an academic, and I'm a social worker. So in terms of your learning, you'll be generally taught by social workers who are also academic. So we won't be like on a lot of other courses bringing people in, say, from sociology to give you a sociology lecture. We will give you the sociology lecture applied to social work. So it's applied sociology. And I think that makes a difference. Some people say it might not make such a difference, but I think it makes a difference. It's quite a dedicated team. We have an open door policy. So we're in this building. We're just on the second floor around the other side. And you can always come in and talk to us. Hopefully, we feel that we're like a family. When you come into us for your 3 years, you'll get to know us, you'll enjoy our company, we'll have a laugh, we'll have a joke, but we'll also, most importantly, we'll be doing some very important business together, and that's getting you ready to be a social worker. Damien, do you want to say anything about, because you're a third year now, say anything about your journey so far?
I think obviously when you first come onto the course, it is really daunting. There's a lot of assignments to do, everything's kind of just brand new and alien, and you're kind of expected to hit on this level, which some people maybe not have been in education for quite some time. But you are really well supported, and I think that the foundation the first year kind of gives you that foundation of the basic skills and the basic kind of theories that you're going to be working with, like psychology, sociology, law, social policy, and then in the second year and the third year, bringing it down into practice really. So it's kind of applying those theories, and by using case studies and by using kind of group work, you're able to kind of apply these different techniques and different theories to kind of real life cases. I think it's really interesting the way that kind of just changes the way you think about things. You maybe come onto the course thinking that you kind of know a lot about the way the world works or whatever, but it kind of opens your eyes a little bit, knowing that through the tuition and through replacements and through effective supervision, it does really kind of open your eyes a bit to kind of what's really going on. It's been quite a journey so far.
Enjoy yourself?
Really good, yeah, really enjoyable.
Okay. I couldn't say otherwise, could he? I'm going to be marking his essay next week. No, I'm joking apart. Hopefully, students do enjoy the journey. Any questions from you?
What are the hours and what are the days?
Good question.
2.5 days, isn't it?
3.5 normally. So Wednesdays you tend not to be here, and Friday afternoons you tend not to be here. So when you're in university, it's 3.5 days. As you get into your third year, it does lessen because you have your dissertation module, so you have more space for private study. But it tends to be 3.5 days for your first and second year. I'm not too sure how the new programme's going to look. I think it'll be similar though. Certainly Wednesdays we try and keep for you to have a break or to do some additional reading, whatever you feel you need to do with that day. And
then your placements obviously 32.5 hours minimum.
That's normally Monday to Friday.
Yeah, Monday to Friday.
So it's 9 till 4, whatever you agree. Any other questions? Do have a look around. The library is just across there. It's connected, so you can just walk around to the library. Have a look at the cafe and where students sit. It is the Faculty of Health, so you'll be mixing with nurses and counsellors and paramedics and midwives and all sorts of other students who are interested in these sorts of professions, and they're all based in this building. So and that's where they basically, during breaks in lectures, etc., which can get a bit hectic and frantic, but also that's where you'll be rubbing shoulders with those people. Thanks for coming. Good luck, and hopefully we'll get an application from you.